Welcome to the channel, where the shadows come alive and the past refuses to stay buried. Tonight we delve into the darkest corners of history with top 5 real-life horror murder stories that will send chills down your spine. From cursed villages to unsolved mysteries, these tales of terror are not for the faint of heart. Each story is a haunting reminder that sometimes reality is far scarier than fiction. So turn off the lights, grab a blanket, and prepare yourself, because these stories will stay with you long after the video ends. 1. The House on the Edge of Town. In 2015, the Tan family, a husband, wife, and their 2 children, moved into a quiet house on the outskirts of Ipoh, Malaysia. It was the perfect home. Large, peaceful, isolated. The house had been vacant for years and no one knew why. The family didn't ask questions until one day they stopped answering calls. And then they disappeared. Days passed, then weeks. Their relatives grew worried. Neighbors noticed something strange. The house was silent, but every night, lights would flicker on and off inside. Someone was still there, but no one ever saw who. Finally, a relative reported the disappearance. Police arrived and found the house locked from the inside. No one answered. They forced their way in. What they found was chilling. The house was immaculate. No signs of struggle. The furniture was in place, the dishes were clean, but the family was gone. Then they saw it. On the dining table, 5 plates, 5 sets of chopsticks. But the Tan family only had 4 people. So who was the 5th plate for? A search revealed no traces of the family, but in the daughter's bedroom, they found a small, hidden notebook. The last entry sent shivers down their spines. Mom says it's just the wind. Dad says it's just the old pipes. But I hear him. I hear him at night. The man in the walls. He's waiting. The police searched every inch of the house, but there was no one there. Then an officer noticed something. A small draft coming from behind a bookshelf. They pulled it aside. Behind it was a door that should not have existed. The officer stepped inside. The air was stale, suffocating. The room was tiny, barely big enough for a person to stand. But someone had lived there. A worn-out mattress, empty food containers, and worst of all, a notebook filled with names. Hundreds of names, dates, details like a ledger of lives. And at the bottom of the list, the last name written was Tan, the entire family's names. And next to them, a single word. Taken. Investigators dug deeper. The house had a history. Decades earlier, in the 1980s, it belonged to a doctor. Dr. Limit A, respected man. But behind closed doors, he was something else entirely. For years, he ran an underground operation, taking in runaways and unwanted children. But none of them were ever seen again. And then, one day, Dr. Lim himself vanished, leaving behind a house full of ghosts. The evidence led the police to a small town hours away, a place where few people came and fewer ever left. There they found a frail, elderly man living under a false name. It was Dr. Limit. And when they confronted him, he laughed, a slow, hollow laugh. "They always come back," he whispered. "The house calls them back." Then he told them where to dig. Behind the house, beneath a twisted old tree, police dug into the cold earth. And there, beneath the roots, they found what they had feared. Remains. Dozens of nameless victims. And among them, the remains of the Tan family. They had been there the whole time. The house had simply swallowed them whole. Dr. Lim had never left. Even after his crimes were exposed in the 1980s, he had hidden in his own home, watching, waiting for the next family to move in. The walls that protected him became his hunting ground. And when the Tan family arrived, they never stood a chance. Dr. Lim was arrested, charged with multiple murders spanning decades. But to his last breath, he never admitted guilt. "The house chose them," he whispered, "not me." And to this day, the house remains abandoned. 2. The vanishing in the village. In 2007, in a rural province of West Bengal, India, a small village called Kajuria gained an eerie reputation. Over the course of 6 months, multiple people went missing without a trace. The disappearances were silent, almost too clean. No signs of struggle, no forced entry, no footprints leading away. People simply went to bed and were never seen again. The villagers lived in fear. Doors were locked before sunset. Children were kept inside. But no matter how careful they were, the disappearances continued. Until finally, one night, a young boy saw something, and what he described sent chills through the village. In July 2007, 10-year-old Rohit Das was playing near the edge of the village when he saw something moving in the fields. Not an animal, not a person, but a group of figures standing perfectly still just beyond the tree line. He blinked, and in an instant, they were gone. Terrified, he ran home. But his story was dismissed as a child's imagination until the next morning. Because that night, his neighbor, an elderly woman named Amala Ghosh, had vanished. And now people started to listen. A search party was formed. But like before, there were no signs, no footprints, no broken locks, nothing. But there was one strange detail. Near Amala's house, the grass was flattened, as if something heavy had been dragged into the trees. So the search moved into the forest. And deep inside, they found something unexpected. A tiny abandoned hut, half buried under overgrown vines. And inside, they found a piece of fabric, a sari, one that belonged to one of the missing women. Someone had been living there, and they had something to hide. Days later, police began searching old wells that had long been covered up. Most were empty, until they found one that wasn't. And when they peered inside, the sight was horrifying. The missing villagers were there, hidden in a place no one ever thought to look. But the worst part? Some of them had only recently been put there, which meant the person responsible was still watching. The villagers were paralyzed with fear. Who was behind this? Who had been living among them, pretending to be one of them? Then one night, a man was caught sneaking through the village. Dirty, ragged. He tried to run, but the villagers cornered him. His name was Biren Mondal, and when the police arrived, the truth finally came out. Biren Mondal had lived on the outskirts of the village for decades. A quiet, lonely man. People said he was strange, but harmless. But after questioning, he confessed. He had been watching the village for years, studying routines, learning habits, waiting for the right moment. And when the village let its guard down, he would strike, taking his victims one by one and hiding them where no one would find them. Until eventually, he was caught. Biren Mondal was sentenced to life in prison. But the scars he left on Kajuria village never faded. Even today, people say, if you walk near the old wells at night, you can still hear the voices of those who were taken. A whisper in the wind, a soft cry. 3. The strange guest house in Chiang Mai. In 2014, travelers passing through Chiang Mai, Thailand, started whispering about a peculiar guest house near the edge of the city. It had no official name, no online reviews, no signs. But people who wandered inside, usually backpackers and solo tourists, were always welcomed with a smile. For a cheap price, they were given a clean room, home-cooked meals, and friendly hospitality. It seemed perfect. But those who stayed too long never left. The first to disappear was Daniel Clark, a 26-year-old traveler from Australia. He checked into the guest house in March 2014 and vanished. The police dismissed it as another lost tourist, until the next month, when a Japanese woman, Aiko Tanaka, also went missing, right after staying in the same guest house. Then a British backpacker, a Korean student, all different nationalities, different backgrounds. But one common link, they had all checked in and never checked out. When concerned families contacted Thai authorities, local police investigated the guest house. They found nothing unusual. Rooms were clean. Passports and belongings of the missing were gone, as if they had simply moved on. The owner, a quiet middle-aged woman named Kamala, claimed the guests had left on their own. She was polite, helpful, and the police found no evidence of foul play, so the case went cold for months, until one day, a terrified guest escaped the house. and everything changed. In October 2014, a French backpacker named Lucy Moreau ran into a police station, barefoot, shaking, barely able to speak. She had escaped from the guest house, and her story was terrifying. She had booked a one-night stay. Everything seemed normal at first. The food, the warm welcome, but on the second night, she woke up feeling dizzy, disoriented. Something wasn't right. And when she tried to leave the next morning, Kamala told her she wasn't allowed to go. That's when she noticed. The door was locked from the outside. She wasn't a guest anymore. She was a prisoner. Lucy managed to escape while Kamala was outside, and when the police raided the guest house, they found what had been hidden for so long. Beneath the kitchen floor, under a loose wooden panel, there was a small underground chamber. Inside, they found remains. Old, new, a place where victims had been trapped and never seen again. After her arrest, the truth about Kamala's past slowly emerged. She had inherited the guest house from her parents, who had used it as a family business for years. But no one knew the dark secret. Kamala's family had been luring travelers in for decades, offering them food, shelter, before making sure they never left. For years, the disappearances had been spaced out, careful, hidden, and finally the house gave up its secrets. Kamala was sentenced to life in prison. The guest house was demolished,